And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Friday, October 3rd, 2025. Starting with the sea ice, there's been just a little bit of early season development along the Beaufort Sea coast, not a whole lot. And if anything, this weekend, we have milder air that's going to be riding northward with a stronger frontal system coming in off the Bering. So that will only delay any further development here through the course of the weekend and early next week. In fact, temperatures over much of the mainland, especially the western parts of the state, are going to be above normal going up just prior to mid-month. Saturday, though, we have this stronger low down near 970 millibars over the northwestern portion of the Bering Sea with an occluded front pushing inland. This front will have some gale force winds associated with it, and it will also stimulate some additional rain, Kodiak Island up into south central along the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound. With this warm front, there's some pretty juicy air coming northward with this, and as that folds to the east, we will see the rain spread along the northeastern Gulf Coast into the Panhandle later Saturday night and during the day on Sunday. And then for Sunday, we find secondary low trying to take shape, Bristol Bay, northern part of the Alaska Peninsula. And with this frontal system, additional rain will just kind of spill off toward the southeast across the Panhandle as we get into Sunday afternoon and evening. Further north, the milder air tries to push up across the Brooks Range and North Slope. So again, temperatures are actually going to modify over this region and go up a bit compared to where they've been. So the marine forecast for the southeast Panhandle areas, inner channels, kind of a mixed bag of winds, variable 5-10 knots, waves a foot or two, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, as well as down near Dixon Entrance. The outer coast, outside of Cross Sound, down to Port Alexander and off of Craig, winds will generally have a westerly component, only around 10 to maybe 15 knots, waves 5 to 6 feet, but then winds turn easterly outside of Yakutat Bay to Cape Suckling, 15 to 20 knots with 5-foot waves. For Sunday, winds will generally be southeast, 10 to 15 knots for the inner channels with waves 2 to maybe 3 feet. For the outer coast and the Gulf, south winds 15 knots off of Craig to Port Alexander, turning southeasterly 20 knots to Sitka, but increasing southeast to east winds 30 knots out of Cross Sound through Yakutat to Cape Suckling with waves building 7 to 10, 11 feet there off of Cape Suckling. Stronger winds Saturday will be located lower Cook Inlet and Kennedy Entrance there with a 40 to 45 knot southeasterly gales and waves upwards of 10 feet. For areas along the eastern Kenai outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, look for easterly winds 25 to 30 knots and then an easterly wind within Prince William Sound with waves 3 to 4 feet. For Upper Cook Inlet, Turnagain Arm, Canet Arm, generally east winds at 15 knots with waves 1 to 3 feet. On Sunday, strongest winds will shift eastward outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance as well as in Prince William Sound. Winds on Sunday will be east-southeasterly gales at 35 knots, waves 6-7 feet within Prince William Sound, up to 10 feet outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance. As we go down the Cook Inlet, look for northeast winds 15 knots, Upper Cook Inlet 25 knots off of Anchor Point, turning southeasterly into Lower Cook Inlet from Kennedy Entrance with waves 5 to 6 feet there for the lower portion of Cook Inlet. Winds on Saturday across Kodiak Island will be southerly 25 knots on the east side of the island, east winds to 20 knots within Shelikof Strait, and then trailing down along the Alaska Peninsula, generally southerly winds about 20 knots, 20 to 25 knots, waves 5 to 6 feet on the North Pacific side, 3 to 5 feet on the Bering side. And for Sunday, south winds 20 to 25 knots in the vicinity of Kodiak Island, waves 4 feet, 8 feet though as you get east of Kodiak City. And then down here along the Alaska Peninsula, southwest to west winds picking up to 25 knots either side there at Cold Bay and False Pass, with waves building 8 to as much as 10 feet there north of Cold Bay. The Aleutians will see some stronger winds out toward the west. Southwest winds 20 knots, eastern Aleutians veering westerly 25 to 30 knots, Atka through Adak. And then as we get out toward Kiska and Shimia, look for west-northwest winds 30 to 35 knots. And on Sunday, winds will generally be out of the west across the eastern and central Aleutians at 25 to 30 knots. And veering back toward the southwest as you get northwest of Adak up through Kiska and Shimia. Now, the stronger winds of the event will be here along the west coast Saturday, with that occluded front pushing inland and causing southeast winds to turn more southerly. We expect 35-knot gales from the south into Kuskokwim Bay, along Etolan Strait, the lower Yukon Delta, and then up through Norton Sound, south-southeast winds to 35 knots. This will create waves 6 to 8 feet there along the Yukon coast areas, especially south shore of the Seward Peninsula there at Nome, Golovin, and then into Kuskokwim Bay. Expect elevated surf, higher surf, and the potential for some minor coastal flooding, Hooper Bay on up toward Imanik along the lower Yukon coast. Further west out towards St. Matthew, St. Paul, winds will be southwesterly to 30 knots. Then on Sunday, winds will come down across the region. Southwest winds 10 to 15 knots into Bristol and Kuskokwim Bays. Areas further west, St. Paul, St. George, and St. Matthew, west winds 20 to 25 knots with waves 10 to 13 feet. And then up along the lower Yukon coast and into Norton Sound, south winds of 15 to 20 knots with waves 3 to 5 feet. And then as we look at the areas along the west side of the Seward Peninsula, Wales to Nome, as well as the north side of St. Lawrence Island, southeast gales to 35 knots with waves 7 to 9 feet, though locally higher in the vicinity near and west of Gamble. Further northward going up through the Chukchi Sea, look for east-northeast winds to 30 knots with waves 5 to 7 feet. And then along the Beaufort Sea coast from Utqiagvik through Kaktovik, winds will be easterly at 15 knots and waves 2 to 3 feet. Stronger winds will set up as the pressure gradient shifts northward and tightens along the Beaufort Sea coast on Sunday. So you're going to see winds that are easterly to 30 knots with waves 7 to 9 feet along the Beaufort Sea coast. Coming down around Cape Lisburne, we'll go from 30-knot easterly winds at Wainwright to southeasterly winds 20 to 25 knots across the lower Chukchi Sea with waves of 4 feet. And then through the Bering Strait on the west side of St. Lawrence, on the north side of St. Lawrence Island and the west side of the Seward Peninsula, winds will generally be southeasterly at 20 knots on Sunday with waves running right around 3 to 4 feet.